presenters finicky here.
You didn't see all of them.
And I'll try to work with the Innovation Depot to get the, figure out what I need to make this not so awkward.
I embrace awkward. All right. My name is Evan Travers, and I'm going to be giving a very brief talk, because I want to pizza, on how to talk to designers like they were engineers. Preface quickly about me. I've been just kind of building websites since I was out of high school. And I would say I'm kind of a modern engineer and a much worse designer, but for most of my career I've been involved directly in helping designers talk to engineers because I sit in the middle as a front-end developer in kind of mid-sized companies and advertising overseas. And it's always amused me how true the stereotypes about communications between developers and designers is. It's like cats and dogs. For some reason we just can't seem to get along. So I want to help you guys avoid breaking up with your designers if possible. And like any good relationship, that involves communication. I guess more preface, I'm not in a relationship right now, so I suppose you shouldn't hear or listen to anything I say. But communication is the core of working with people. And sometimes we forget about that because we think about all the business logic and the roles and the relationships and the rules of like who gives you work as your boss and all the books that are built around it. But when it comes down to it, you're sitting across the table from another person and you use words that mean the same thing to each other and come up with meaning and make a result. One thing that I've realized about the great developers that I've worked with is their ability to communicate. When I first started programming, I didn't really know how everything worked. I could push this button and this thing happened. And that lizard brain inside my head taught me that that was good. And then I discovered Eclipse and made the red lines go away. And someone slapped me in the face repeatedly and discovered Vim. And life got better and better. But for a long time, there was a long period in my life when I couldn't express to you why this block of code was better than this block of code. I didn't have the vocabulary, the words, the patterns to use to describe to you why you should do this thing as opposed to this thing. I was thinking about that a lot because I'm really interested in learning. And I realized that this is dumb and I made it up over lunch break, so take it with a grain of salt. People have a certain amount of latent talent or instinct as to what's good or bad and what they like. But there becomes a certain point if you pursue something, pursuing excellence, where you categorize why that thing is good. I enjoy photography. The first time I picked up a camera, it was something that spoke to me and I really liked it. When I first started taking pictures of flowers and coffee cups and nonsense, I couldn't tell you what made this photo better than the same photo I could take 3 feet to the right. It just felt better, like a gut feeling. As I grew older, I read lots of books and I took thousands and thousands of frames later and I talked to other photographers and I learned some words and values. I could say that this photo works better than this photo because in this photo, the rail comes in at the corner and leads into the horizon rather than disrupting the flow. I got words to describe and convey what's good and bad, right? One of the things that I've realized about a lot of so anyway, my instinct of like the gut feeling of what's good and bad, over time through experience and talking with people, led to sort of self-realization as to what is good and bad, and let me communicate those things to other people so I can help teach and collaborate. This makes, when you guys are working with the designers in your companies, or that you deal with, shared vocabulary is incredibly important. Because when the big meeting occurs, the boss is sitting at one end of the table, and you designers and engineers are sitting one end of the table, and the Photoshop pixel pusher is sitting at the other end of the table, and they put something up on the screen, they're seeing color values and emotion, and you're seeing the lines of code required to make that thing occur. And there has to be a certain amount of translation required in order to get that to work. Unfortunately, we don't actually, as engineers, tend to think about how that works for the designers. So the designer looks at all 3 of these pictures and might use the word drop-downs. Everything's a drop-down. It's like an arrow, it's a drop-down, drop-down. That's useful up to a point if you're describing it to a salesperson or what the value. Click this and it will drop down. But later on, when you're having a sub-meeting about what that drop-down does, visual arts are a science. I tried to find it when I could. This is somewhere buried deep within the bowels of my delicious bookmarks. There's a tremendous post that someone put up about how everyone can draw. And it began with the statement, as artists, professional comic book artists, that someday robots will be able to draw compelling art. That took me by surprise because growing up, I'm taught to think that art, visual things that we see and interact with, is like a core emotional thing that is unique to humans. Movie after science fiction movie have taught us that the robots will take our jobs in factories, but they'll never take our ability to paint. But the reality is there is a science to it. Your eyes and brains are constructs that respond to certain stimuli better in this case and worse in this case. The problem with us as engineers is we don't know the right words to describe good from bad. And the problem with a lot of designers is because of that thought process of what feels good, they're taught to cultivate that instinct, and it can be very good. There are designers out there who are incredibly gifted at creating emotionally compelling constructs that we interact with, but they can't tell you why, because their entire life they've never been taught to build a vocabulary on what makes this good, what makes this bad. Because they're just cultivating that instinct. But this article turning on to this idea that there are words, there is vocabulary that you can use to describe the better from the best and to collaborate and share and create new things. I found this amazing Dribble post. It was maybe something else, I don't remember. One of these sites. And unfortunately, it's a little dark, so I apologize to you guys. Maybe we can kill
The light switch is over there.
Cool.
I've learned from seeing someone put.
That's neat. And I think you'd all agree that this Gmail redesign is kind of compelling looking. It's nice. It looks attractive. I want to click on it. I mean, the Gmail we have now is really great too. Granted, this is just, yak shaving or whatever. But it's nice looking. But I can't tell you why yet, because I don't have the right words and vocabulary for it. The difference between this designer that I encountered and the other ones that I normally see as I poke through different UX redesigns on designer news or whatever, is that he had the reasons and he had the vocabulary to explain it. He said, this looks great because I built a very nice framework for all the content to live in. He thought carefully about the ratios. And I've read about ratios. We all dealt with 12-column layouts that are popular in Bootstrap and other frameworks out there. And they look pretty good if you stick to your thirds and your halves, and it all kind of plays out nicely. But I don't know why. And this designer took it a step further. He decided to build the entire layout on a goal ratio based on the size of the Google logo in the top left corner of his Gmail layout. So you can see here, there's the beginning ratio, and here's the ratio times the previous one. And here are all the places. So here's the primary unit. Here's all the places that it builds out. And that kind of made my brain explode a little bit. So fortunately, he put this nice little GIF to show how it all plays out. So you can see that goal ratio triangle slowly expanding out, highlighting how each bit lines up and works together in harmony. This really was amazing to me. I never had a designer say to me, this margin looks good because it harmonizes with the way the headers are aligned. But now that I see this, I know it's possible. Which leads me to my last point. Designers are engineers. They just don't know how to think like you and me yet. They have the vocabulary. It's true. They don't have the vocabulary, and they haven't been taught to take that gut instinctual process to realize what it actually is and turn into a vocabulary that you can use to collaborate and share. And conversely, the encouraging thing is that you and I can also do some design. We may not have the latent amount of gift to instinctually know, like, this color is working well together. I am miserable at color wheels. I'm awful at them. But there is a theory, and you can actually write tools to create nice visualization colors for your next graph that all work together but are still visually distinct. There's a formula for it. Some designer just picked 5 colors at some point. He didn't know he was following a rule, but you can look up the math and follow it. So, kind of in closing, the short answer for you guys is walk away and go home, go back to your work, and start building a shared vocabulary